Hello everyone and welcome to the 2018 Moto GP Esport Championship. After our first semi-final in Misano back in September, we're back in action once again. It's time for semi-final 2 and we're here at the Movistar Esports Centre in Madrid, and boy is this going to be very, very exciting. My name's Tom Brooks and alongside me for the first time, and welcome here to the Moto GP Esport family, Lisa Leyland.
Thanks, Tom. Welcome to everyone. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here again for the Esport Championship. We're here in lovely Madrid. As you can see, we're almost ready to start. But before we get things underway, there's one more person that we need to introduce.
Thanks, Lisa. Hello, Tom. A warm welcome to the audience here in Madrid and across the globe. I'll be up here in commentary, taking you through all of the action as it unfolds and what's sure to be an exciting second semi-final. Firstly in qualifying and then in the race. We'll see you up here shortly, Tom. And now we move over to Motorland Aragon for our second semi-final. Plenty of action to look forward to. As I said, firstly in a 10-minute qualifying session, and then in the semi-final itself, where we'll determine the last of our qualifiers to the grand final. So with that in mind then, Lisa, is everything ready down there?
Yes, guys, having now refreshed our memories of what happened in the second part of the season, it's time now to welcome our players. Gamers, come on in, come and join me on stage. Here we go, a very warm welcome to all of you. A round of applause. Just to let you know, as we mentioned in our first semi-final, that this year the players have been able to access the Moto GP game on Xbox, PlayStation and PC. Our semi-finalists have made it through tonight on a variety of different platforms. But this evening, everyone will be playing with Lenovo by Legion computers, but with a gaming controller that they can choose. So let's check out who will be fighting for a place in the grand final this evening. Let's check out their names and where they are from. Okay, from the fifth challenge, our PlayStation winner, Rick Moto GP 35, our Xbox winner, Bomber 45, and our PC winner, last year's world champion, no less, Travesteri 7358. From the sixth challenge, the PlayStation winner, Davide Galina 23, Xbox top competitor, Ayorka 26, and the PC classified, Ivan Avella. From the seventh challenge, our PC winner, Matero 1, our Xbox winner, QP Nova QP, and our top classified PlayStation contestant, Vindex 813. And finally, from the eighth challenge, our PC top classified from Indonesia, Mo, our Xbox winner, Juan, NH16, and our top classified PlayStation contestant, Paul IG. Again, I want to have a warm welcome to all our semi-finalists this evening and really welcome them to this championship and welcome them here tonight and wishing them the best of luck. Now, often people play video games to disconnect, to relax. So what we did is ask our MotoGP riders if they ever play video games and with whom. And this is what they had to say.
When I was a kid, I was playing a lot, and even when I was in Moto2, but since I arrived in MotoGP, I realized that I don't have time, and then I play sometimes, but not much. My brother is still in Moto2, have much more time, less events, and then he's able to practice more. But on winter time, I'm coming closer.
Yeah, I play. One of my passions is video games, always. That was my passion. Still is my passion, but I don't have any more time, or I don't have the same time that I have before. I play much less, but still I have some skills, especially in motor racing games.
Well, it looks like some of the riders actually play the video games to learn the layouts of the circuits. So who knows, maybe some of our gamers will become riders in the future. You never know, stranger things have happened. But back to the present, and it's the moment we've been waiting for. It's time to qualify. Tom, Alex, it's over to you.
A perfect introduction to our competitors. The stage is set then for the riders to meet for the first time, jostling for starting positions on the grid, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely right there, Alex. It is time then to get ready to see how the grid is going to line up. Let's go qualifying. The Motorland Aragon circuit is the venue for semi-final 2 in the MotoGP Esport Championship. As we said, this is how we will find out who lines up on where on the grid over the course for the race. Now, it's a 10-minute qualifying session. It's a very long lap here at Motorland Aragon as well. So it does mean that getting those laps in pretty early is pretty crucial, Alex.
Yes, plenty of overtaking opportunities on this circuit. A fast-paced Hermann Tilke track, most notable, as you said, for its length, over 5 kilometres. It'll take some time for the riders just to leave the pits, complete the warm-up lap, and then set their first time lap. So that really does mean that one lost lap for an incident or similar could leave a rider under a great deal of pressure just to set a time in only 10 minutes of qualifying.
Well, that 10-minute session is now underway. The riders making their way out of pit lane then for the first time here at Motorland Aragon. It's based in Alcañiz in Spain, a very small village actually. It's about halfway between Barcelona and Madrid, and a circuit that is a favourite amongst the MotoGP riders. A track that, of course, was opened back in 2009, has been on the MotoGP calendar for every year since 2010, and it's full of various twists and turns, lots of technical ones, some fast, some flowing as well.
As some of the riders come out onto the circuit for the first time then, and as we build up to this qualifying session, a quick word about the various nationalities represented at what is undoubtedly a global event. We already have 6 riders through from 3 different nationalities, including Germany, moving through to the final, and our semi-final 2 competitors cover 5 different nationalities. Spain best represented, they have 5 gamers, Italy with 4, Great Britain, France and Indonesia with 1 rider each. So great to see such a variety of nationalities represented here.
Yeah, MotoGP Esport Championship this year, of course, very much an international flavour as it has been over the last couple of years now. You can see as we look at Ivan Avella, he chose the Rebel KTM bike. We should state, by the way, that the bike that these riders have chosen was based yesterday on the free practice times. We had 3 free practice sessions. Free practice 3 was the session that counted most for these 12 riders. Basically, it went in descending order. So from first down to 12th position. Of course, if you finish that session in first, that means that you, of course, got the first pick of the bike. The man who finished in first position at the end of yesterday was last year's champion, Trastevere 73, and he is going to be on that factory Ducati, trying to get himself into pole position.
Trastevere very much the man to beat, one of the pre-race favourites this weekend. There has been plenty of action already, as we said this week. The practices that you mentioned there yesterday, but also further practices here today, and Trastevere has come out on top invariably, so he will be looking to carry that form through qualifying and indeed into the race itself.
Yeah, it's been interesting to notice qualifying tactics, because we've had quite a few time sessions actually today with Trastevere, the Italian. We ride on board with him, and now we look at him from an external angle, and we saw actually that he was setting lap times in the qualifying sessions quite late on in that session. A really interesting tactic that he had going on.
Interesting to note as well, Bomber 45 has an incident on the outlap, so he's showing us being pit and now clearly returning to the circuit. So that will leave him a little bit out of kilter with the rest of the riders out on track, who are all coming through and towards completion of their first full-timed lap. While we've got it up on the screen, the tower graphic on the left-hand side gives you information about the lap times that are being set, and orange is a personal best, and clearly at this stage on a first full flying lap, that's what you'd expect all of the riders to be setting, and a red would be a new outright fastest, and we'll see those once the first flying laps are completed by these riders.
Yeah, absolutely right. If it's in grey, it does mean that it's a non-improvement over that sector, either on their personal best or indeed on a fastest lap, whether they are on it at all. And it is by sector as well, so even if they set a yellow first or an orange first sector, they can set a red second sector and be fastest overall in that particular part of the lap. Just looking at Montero 1 here as well, that's a name that will be familiar to you if you watch MotoGP Esports Grand Final in 2017. He was a part of that, if you remember, and a very big part of it he was as well. He sadly had a crash, though, on his first flying lap here, not the way he wanted to do things.
Curse of the commentator, just as he was being introduced and discussed as one of the favourites from last season, as the first time laps come in.
Yeah, Ivan Avella, the fastest man then initially in this session, Rick MotoGP 35, and you can see a crash there at the first corner. Juan NH16 setting it to the scenery at the first turn, and Ivan Avella also having a bit of an off-track excursion going through turn 1 and then carrying it on through turn 2 there. Manages to keep it upright relatively easily, but this lap, of course, has been invalidated. There's only 6 minutes left on the clock. The time is counting down pretty quickly here, so it is crucial, as we said, to get those lap times in, at least to have a banker lap time in early on in the session, because if you do manage to mess up the latter half of the session, at least you've got some kind of representation on the board.
And a warning coming from race direction for Ivan Avella, which I can only assume is for exceeding track limits, so that's something he'll have to watch out for as this session goes on. But so far, so good for him. He currently sits top of the timesheets and by over 0.2 of a second clear of Rick Moto GP in second place. We did mention Trastevere saving his best until the latter stages of the session. At the moment, he's down in P4 and 0.4 of a second back.
Should mention on that tower graphic on the left-hand side of your screen as well, if you can see a white triangle with the red background, that denotes that the lap time has been cancelled, generally due to exceeding track limits, or race direction might have decided that that is a reason. There is a reason why that lap time has been disallowed. You can see Paul IG has had a crash. Likewise, Rick Moto GP35. We just catch the back end of that one there. He's on the Alba Pramac Ducati, the only Briton on the grid here tonight. And during the rehearsals that we had earlier on today, he was looking pretty handy actually, and it was actually very interesting to note where different riders were stronger, and it can come down a lot due to just keeping your nose out of trouble in those first few laps of the race.
Focusing at the moment on Trastevere because he has just set a new personal best and fastest third sector, heading towards the conclusion of what looks set to be a potential first position lap, and it is indeed a new fastest for the session, 1:39.5, and he'll be satisfied with that, because we have seen during the course of this week him hovering around about that marker, and that being enough for him to be the leader in among these riders.
Yeah, you can see the world champion there just watching on. He'd love to be able to become a two-time world champion, but of course he needs to get himself in those top 6 positions under race conditions. At the moment, he's at the top of the qualifying session. Ivan Avella is just over 1/10 of a second behind Rick Moto GP35 there in 3rd place as well, so front row currently for him. Fastest in the first sector though is Ryorka 26 on board the number 37 machine. We now ride on board with the LCR Honda rider, just going down through the reverse corkscrew. This is looking like some lap from the Spaniard.
Well, back at the moment in terms of single lap pace, a second down on the leader, but an opportunity to improve on that here clearly with a good first sector. Trastevere's been so strong in the back half of the lap, particularly the last sector, which to be honest is only 2 turns, and yet somehow he manages to hook it up perfectly and consistently put in decent times throughout part of the lap. And we do now see that Ryorka does indeed drop a little bit back in the second sector, still on a personal best though, and he'll be one to watch towards the end of this lap. A couple of riders on personal bests at the moment.
Yeah, those personal best lap times coming in. You can see the split time as well over that particular sector. You can see Ryorka has actually dropped a lot of time in that second and third sector, where Trastevere was so strong. 0.6 of a second down now he is on the fastest lap time, which would put him in the middle of that second row of the grid as it stands. We look at Matero 1 here on board the number 27. He's on board the Angel Nieto Ducati. Matero needs a good lap time because he is just sitting on the fringes of the top 10 in 11th position. Over the timeline comes Matero. He goes to the second row of the grid, but lap time's coming in. Ryorka goes to the middle of the second row now as well, bumping Matero down to the 3rd row of the grid here.
3 riders hadn't set a lap time until they came thundering over the line there. Bomber 45 is still on what will be his first completed lap, because of course his incident on the warm-up lap, but we will very shortly have 12 riders having completed their first laps, and at the moment just a second separating the 11 riders who have, nice and close as we might have expected.
Yeah, down the back straight we go with the LCR Honda rider. This is Bomber 45, and you can see Bomber at the moment is needing to set a good lap time, as you said there, Alex, as well. He's down in last position at the moment. What is his lap time going to be? It's a personal best in that 3rd sector. Is it going to be anything to write home about as he comes over the timing line? He'll get one more bite at the cherry, maybe 2 if he's on it, down towards that first corner. Bomber 45, not a lap time that's anything particularly special. He's 1.3 seconds adrift of the fastest pace, but one thing crucial to mention here, Alex, is the gap between the top 12 riders, just over 1 second, and under a second between the top 11.
Yeah, as I said, Bomber 45 is now up and running, and that, although not really a representative time of what he's surely capable of doing, he's up and running. He's set a lap now and can really get on and about his business. Meanwhile, the top 2 are trying to extend their margin even further. Trastevere just running wide there and exceeding track limits, and that lap is going to be invalidated. But Ivan Avella still going well. Second position on the timesheets at the moment, but only a 10th down, and at the moment, with 3 sectors completed, up with an opportunity to go fastest.
The KTM RC16 comes barreling down that back straight. He's got no slipstream in front. He's got the world champion and the pole sitter currently in front as well. Just 2 more corners from home, and Ivan Novella here could be set to upset the Italian's party. We look at the Italian on the left-hand side of your screen now, around the final corner and over the timing line for Ivan Novella. He's had the lap time cancelled though, actually. He's exceeded track limits somewhere along the line, and unfortunately what looked to be a very promising lap time has all gone to pot.
Yes, the inset image in the bottom left-hand corner showed his frustration before he even got to the finish line, so he knew that that wasn't going to work. In the meanwhile, Paul IG had moved himself up onto the front row and up into 2nd position as Trastevere has an incident, so he will be under pressure now. 40-odd seconds still remaining on the clock. The riders can complete any laps that they're on when the checkered flag falls, but apart from Bomber 45, not many of them are going to get a full extra lap. He's coming through now and moves up into 11th position, 0.8 of a second back from our current leader, but that does mean now that all 12 are covered by less than a second.
Yeah, Bomber 45 really going to have to pull his finger out here on this final flying lap. Here's Rick Moto GP35 representing Great Britain. He's at the head of the 2nd row of the grid in 4th position on board that Alma Pramet Ducati. Currently, can he put anything together? He was fastest in the 1st sector, dropped a bit of time in that 2nd sector, but let's see how this 3rd sector... Oh, and he's down as I say that, so he was on a personal best lap time, and it is going to be a best then of 4th position on the grid for the Briton here. Nobody else around him looking like they're improving significantly. David Galina there in 6th place on the outside of that 2nd row on a personal best in the 2nd sector, but nobody really upsetting the party at the moment.
No, Vindex with a new fastest 1st sector, but 2 slower sectors since then, so seemingly dropping out of contention to move up from the 3rd row. Of course, we'll have 4 rows of 3 riders for the race itself. QP, Nova, Mo and Bomber, the bottom 3 at the moment, who would provisionally be on the back row of the grid, do all still have opportunities to improve, and they all are on personal best laps at the moment. So that's where the focus will be late on here, as Mo attempts to climb up from bottom on the grid, still within a second of the leader, comes over the line and does improve inside the top 10.
Yeah, 9th position there for Mo at the checkered flag on board the Aprilia Racing Team Grassini RSGP. So good final lap there from Mo representing Indonesia. There's a lot of support for the Southeast Asian rider. He could be set to potentially make history by becoming the 1st rider from that continent to make themselves into that final. Here we look at Bomber 45 then. He's on his final flying lap. Is it going to be anything to shout about? It was personal best in the 3rd sector over the line here for the Repsol Honda rider. Can he improve? He does, inside the top 10 right at the very end of that session. So 10th place for Bomber. That is something for him to smile about at what was a very difficult qualifying session.
Very challenging indeed. We didn't see any runaway leaders this time around as we take a look at the results of that qualifying then. Trastevere taking the pole position. Well, we might have anticipated that in terms of single lap paces. Rivals won't be too pleased about that. They would have liked to stop him bursting away in the early stages of the race, but they've got it all to do now. That said, nice and close in terms of the timings, all within a second of one another. We're in for a very exciting race.
Yeah, absolutely right there, as you said, Alex. It's going to be very exciting. Here it is, Trastevere then, the Italian, looking pretty calm and cool and collected as it goes after that qualifying session. A very, very exciting qualifying session that was. And as you said, that gap in particular is the big talking point, and surely it's going to make the race absolutely tantalising.
And he has every reason to be satisfied. He has been peerless so far here this week, and another example of outright and dominant pace there, but not by a massive margin. That might be a bit of a concern for him. The others have clearly stepped it up, knowing it's game time now.
Yeah, absolutely right then. So let's see how the riders fared over the course of that session. Some highlights from qualifying here for semi-final 2. You can see that everybody was getting themselves ready and wound up to set their first flying laps in the session pretty early on. You see the concentrated faces of our competitors down there as well. And here we can see this is Paul IG in particular in the early stages of the session. He was trying to set his personal best lap time. Should mention these riders, these competitors have had the opportunity to select their own controllers for this particular event, so personal preference comes down to it.
The great thing about seeing them in action, of course, is no helmets here. We get to see the concentration on their faces, the look in their eyes, steely determination, and it certainly gives you an extra aspect to seeing the racing.
Yeah, it certainly does. You can see the competitive lap times coming in. Trastevere there with that fastest lap. He wasn't to be beaten in that session. Some other riders got mighty, mighty close. Matero won in some points in particular, was looking pretty menacing on board that Angel Nieto Ducati. Wasn't quite enough, and you can see the frustration there for some of the riders creeping in. That is Trastevere there, the fastest rider in that session. He had a lap time disallowed in the latter stages. Bomber 45 as well. He managed to get himself right out of the bottom dregs of the session right at the very end as well.
Yeah, hard work for Bomber right from the start. The opening lap with a spin on the warm-up lap, but managed to bounce back and get something out of the session, get some running. There were plenty of crashes there as they just pushed to the absolute limit, and in a few cases beyond it as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. This was Rick Moto GP35. He had 2 crashes at exactly the same point over the course of that session. There it is, Trastevere then. Pole position for him, exactly what he needed and wanted to do. He'll have the clearest view down towards that first corner. It is going to be absolutely crucial to see how they go over the course of that 10-lap race. Motorland Aragon in Spain is the home of semi-final 2. The circuit based in Alcañiz. It's going to be very, very exciting over the course of this 10-lap race. The top 6 competitors, let's not forget, at the checkered flag, will be going through to that grand final in Valencia. It is going to be very, very unpredictable, this one, Alex.
Focus on those top 6 positions then, and therefore the riders just need to make sure that they remain consistent, error-free. Qualifying was one thing. You could make errors, take risks going for single lap pace, but here no errors will be permitted.
Here are the starting grid then. Trastevere, Paul IG, Ivan Avella on the front row. Rick Moto GP35, you can see there on row 2 as well. Vindex, Matero, Mo on row 3, Bomber, Nova and Juan on row 4. And you can see 4 rows of 3 riders down to that first 90-degree left-hander. It is going to be very unpredictable to see who will get the jump down. So wait for those red lights to come on at the top of your screen. Who will get the drag down to that first corner? Who will be leading over the line in 10 laps time as we get ready to find out who the 6 finalists will be at the end of this evening. It's ready then to go racing here in Alcañiz in Spain. Semi-final 2 for the Moto GP Esport Championship is underway, and it's a good start from Trastevere from pole position. Who else gets away very well? Look at Rick Moto GP 35 on the Alba Pramac Ducati. Paul IG slots himself into second place. Everybody being very, very cautious into the first corner, but not Nova QP. And a big crash for Rick Moto GP 35, and somebody else has gone down. Matero 1 has crashed out in the first couple of corners here. Big drama. So it's Trastevere from Paul IG from now Bomber 45.
And Ivan Avella, one of our fastest riders so far this week, has also got himself into problems. So there goes absolutely everything I said about keeping calm and cautious on the opening lap in particular, keeping yourself up and in the race, because we had 4 dramatic crashes in the early stages and the top 8 starting to break away now.
Well, this is exactly what Trastevere needed to do. He's now 0.3 of a second in front of Paul IG. Paul on board the Monster Yamaha Hard Tech 3 machine will be trying to do in the Madrid crowd proud, his home crowd proud here tonight, but he's going to have a very hard task, because Trastevere, when he has clear track in front of him in particular, is so good at just stretching out an advantage.
And this is exactly what his rivals didn't want to see. The Italian, the reigning world champion, breaking away out in front. The riders who fell early on battling amongst themselves out at the back, but there's a 3-second gap behind 8th position already. So the last of those qualification positions, transfer spots to the final if you like, are closely contested, but at the moment only by 8 riders.
Yeah, absolutely right. So Juan NH16, the last of the riders who is going to be going through to semi-final 2 as it stands at the moment, but you can see lots of battles taking place further back. You can see Paul IG all over the back end of Trastevere as Trastevere runs it a little bit wide there through turn 16. That might compromise his run going on to this start-finish straight. Let's see whether the slipstream comes into effect. Over the line we go to complete the first lap, down towards that first corner. Paul is not close enough at this moment.
Looks for a bit of a cutback though, coming off turn number 1, trying to line himself up. He's certainly looking menacing on the tail of our race leader, who's not going to want to risk too much defending that race lead. There's 2 battles going on here. The race for top spot, of course, and the prize that Lisa's already explained that is carried with it, and a place in the top 6 and a place in that grand final. But it couldn't be much closer at the moment between the top 2 in the first of our battles.
Tell you what, David Galina's got some problems from behind there, as well as Bomber, because those guys are separated by the smallest of margins at the moment. Bomber there in 3rd position ahead of Galina and Juan NH16, as well as Vindex. Actually, they're all separated by a very small margin. And Mo as well, the Indonesian, he's in 7th place at the moment, just outside of that crucial top 6. By the way, if your name's in white, it means you're all right. It means you're through to the grand final in Valencia at the moment, but that could all be set to change over the next 7.5 laps.
5th to 8th at the moment, covered by 1.5 seconds. So the last of our qualification positions, as tense as you like early on. Will this race settle down, or will it be like a game of chess where they strategically hold station and wait for errors for riders around them? Because those errors so far have indeed been forthcoming.
So through into the left-hander, out of turn 15 we go on towards the 968-metre-long back straight. Look at Bomber now. He's trying to gap David Galina. This is exactly what Bomber needs to do to hold on to that final podium position. And even Avella's had a second crash in this race, so perhaps pushing it a little bit too hard, trying to make up for lost time after that opening lap crash. And sadly, on lap 2, he's gone down the road again.
Yeah, Avella down from 11th position, goes to the back of the field, and surely that's going to be too far back to come from there. It would take a real turn of events for him to get back up and running in amongst those qualification positions. Another new fastest lap from our race leader. Over 0.2 of a second is the gap on paper at least, but Paul IG doesn't look to be dropping back to too great an extent.
No moves being made here for Paul IG, as you say there. Nothing in particular between them in terms of lap times at the moment as it sits between Trastevere and Paul IG. Look at this as well further back. Here is Mo. He's in 7th place, just outside of that crucial top 6. But look how close the gap is in front of him as well between Juan and H16. Vindex also immediately in front of him, as well as David Galina. Here is Mo, the Indonesian. We know we've got a lot of fans over in Asia and especially in the Southeast Asian region, and they will be certainly hoping that he is able to put on a strong performance for them here tonight.
Brilliant opportunity to see the battle for the last of those transfer spots as Mo tries to line up a move on Vindex for 6th position. There's not much to choose between 6th, 7th, and Ryorka in 8th position, not too far adrift either. The other 4 riders who've all been involved in incidents on the opening 2 laps, some way adrift and need to set really fast lap times now to get back into contention, and need to hope for errors from these guys as they go nose to tail, with Mo looking for a way through into P6.
Through the right-hander we go then. This is as they come down the hill in towards turn 14. And then into turn 15. It's a very difficult braking zone, that, because it goes downhill and it's easy to just wash out the front end, as we've seen over the course. We saw that from Rick Moto GP 35 during the qualifying session. Nobody going down there at the moment, everybody keeping it on the straight and narrow, and those gaps becoming even more pronounced as the sectors tick on.
And Vindex just far enough away at the moment that Mo can't try to do anything too clever, tucking in directly behind him and gaining an advantage down the inside line. No such fortune for him for now. It's 1.5 seconds covering the top 3. They're starting to gradually break away. Trastevere with the largest advantage he's had all race now. 0.4 of a second up on Paul IG in 2nd place.
Yeah, fastest overall. 3 consecutive lap times that have been quickest for Trastevere over the last timing line, and he is looking like he's trying to check out here. He's got a 0.4 of a second advantage over Paul IG, which is just enough of a buffer for Paul IG to not close up. But we can see how much quicker the Movistar Yamaha, the Monster Yamaha Tech 3 rider, I should say, in the first sector in particular, is closing up onto the back of Trastevere.
And meanwhile, Vindex isn't dropping Mo either, so that fight for 6th position, the last of the automatic transfer spots, is going absolutely nowhere, and Ryorka has managed to close in on them as well, so we're starting to develop a 3-rider pack now in the battle for 6th place.
This is going to be very exciting and very, very crucial indeed. Mo there in 7th place, Ryorka in 8th position, Vindex just in front of those 2 at the moment. Let's keep an eye as we cross back to look at David Galina here. He's riding the Team X-Star Suzuki machine, something of a quiet race for him, but he won't mind that in any way, shape or form, because he's exactly what he needs to get himself into that grand final. Further back, completely different story. Juan and H16, Vindex close behind, Mo also in touching distance, as well as Ryorka. We look at Mo now, the Indonesian, down through into the left of turn 15, on towards that back straight we go for the 4th time of asking, is the slipstream going to come into effect for any of these riders? They're just not close enough to be able to use it effectively.
Doesn't look as though he's close enough for the moment at least, and the rider directly ahead of him not even needing to move to break that slipstream advantage. So for the moment, the rider's holding station, but Vindex, Mo and Ryorka, who actually has been dropped off by a couple of tenths on this lap, still very much in contention. And don't forget about those riders trying to come back from a massive self-imposed handicap early on, because QP Nova is now less than 2 seconds back from this group, as you can see, just in the distance there, fighting off Rick Moto GP on the fringes of the top 10.
Yeah, Rick Moto GP, of course, on the recovery ride. He's going to need a minor miracle to try and catch up to the back of this group and get themselves in contention, but we know that Rick has had the pace. He qualified on the head of that 2nd row of the grid and was potentially going even quicker before he crashed on his final flying lap. So if he's able to put something together, gets maybe some clean air or use another rider to help him ascend through the field, that could be very beneficial for him indeed.
3.5 seconds at the moment is the gap separating him from a grand final position, and it's Vindex who's going to feel the most nervous of all.
Mo's crash, sorry to interrupt you there, Alex. So he, from 7th position, has sadly had an incident on track and has sent it down the road, and that potentially could be his charge for the grand final over here tonight.
Half race distance, and Mo drops down to 11th position. Ivana Vella, who was really in the wars on the opening couple of laps, the only rider behind him now, and Mo rejoins at the back of the group behind Montero in P11. Rick MotoGP then, who we were talking about. Is that a second incident for Mo, or is that still the graphic from the first one? Looks like Mo's now gone to the back of the field. So Mo with real difficulties here, and I think that spells the end of any qualification hopes for him.
That's a big shame there for him. You can see the riders breaking over to the right-hand side of the circuit as we look at it, trying to get out of that slipstream. You can see the top two still relatively within touching distance of one another. Trastevere on the left-hand bottom of your screen, Paul IG on the top. Both two very nice guys, and they are trying to get themselves that BMW driving experience at the Nürburgring. They'll be joining Christian MM17, our winner from semi-final 1. 7/10
of a second between them. The incident for Mo has really broken a little bit the fight for 6th position, but only briefly, because remember, Ryorka was going strongly and closing in. QP Nova has gradually reduced that deficit that was massive at the end of lap number 2, but is now less than 2 seconds, and just as I said, 3.5 seconds, covering 6th down to what is now 9th position. That was 10th, of course, before the crash for Mo.
So through the right-hander we go, this opening sector, it begins to tighten up on you. It's a very tricky part of the lap to deal with, especially as you flick it into this right-hander. We're looking at Bomber 45, a quiet race it has been for the Repsol Honda rider, but that's exactly what he'll have wanted. A podium position will be something to smile about come the end of race day. We're now at 6 laps out of 10, so we're over half distance in this race. You can see David Galina there. Now he's going to have to try and keep his eye on the rider behind him. That, of course, is Juan NH16, Juan on the Movistar Yamaha, beginning to close incrementally over the latter half of this race.
But do you get yourself into a
fight?
fight?
And he's off. And 1NH16 sadly has a high side and crashes out. We could hear the big drama from behind us as well, and we could hear the emotions from 1NH16, and that does send him out then of the grand final as it stands at the moment.
I was literally just saying that, do they risk pushing to try and hold position, or do they simply allow themselves to drop back, knowing they've got a significant advantage over riders outside of the top 6? And Juan NH has made the racer's decision. He carried on going for it, and he's dropped it out off the circuit.
Well, Christmas come early then for Ryorka, 26 at the moment. He's now inside the top 6, and he makes his way into that grand final. As it stands, you can see the LCR Honda rider. There's a big gap behind him as well in the form of Nova GP and also Rick MotoGP 35. So Juan NH16 might have thrown this all away. You can see Trastevere 73 at the moment, your race leader, your reigning world champion. He has got now a 7/10 of a second advantage over Paul IG. That is enough of a buffer, as we've seen, for him to not be challenged immediately from behind.
Just going back to the fight for 6th position, remember that QP Nova has gradually decreased that gap progressively over the laps, and now he'll be looking at trying to make an impression, because it's only just over a second and there is time before the checkered flag for him to have a real assault on P6. That's something to look forward to later on.
Certainly is. Through the left-hander we go. Here is Bomber 45. Then you can see Paul IG there in second place just up the road. You can see David Galina there as well. He's got a podium in sight, but he's going to have to really put some hard work in. He's under a second away from Bomber now, so maybe if he's able to close up over the next lap or two, he might be able to think about something either on the penultimate lap or the last lap. But we know how consistent Bomber has been, and that has really been the name of the game here in the MotoGP Esport Championship. Consistency over the course of a race will get you through.
Seeing Vindex in 5th position, 1 second back from Davide Galina, who Tom's just been talking about, 0.6 of a second clear of Ryorka. Ryorka's not going to try and get himself in the mix for a battle for 5th position, I wouldn't suspect, in too much of a hurry, but he does need to keep the pace up, because QP Nova, as we've said repeatedly, is now just over a second behind, and Juan NH is coming back into it after his earlier crash. Rick MotoGP going with him, 2 seconds covering 7th to 9th positions, and they're only now a second back from 6th place. We could have a 4-rider scrap by the end.
Oh, this is getting very tantalising in the closing stages then of semi-final 2. Let's keep an eye and see how that gap does increase or decrease over the course of the next final 2 laps. Here is QP Nova then, not necessarily been the fastest rider over the course of this eSport semi-final. However, he has been consistent, and he has crucially stayed on 2 wheels. And Mo, to compound his woes, has had a 3rd crash in this race.
Closing up for 8th position here, Juan NH16 only narrowly ahead of Rick MotoGP. These two won't want to hold one another up. They need to be closing down QP Nova, but most specifically, the three of them need to be going towards Ryorka, who sits in that last qualification place.
Well, we see this in Moto 3, don't we? Riders working together, using the slipstream to try and close that gap down to riders in front. It's not quite as effective here in MotoGP. However, you can still do it, and these guys need to be working together. They need to be thinking about tactics to close up and give themselves the best opportunity possible. However, of course, then comes the point where you've worked together, then you close up onto the back of that top 6 position, and the gloves come off.
Yeah, Rick MotoGP might be thinking he needs to get past Juan NH here because he is dropping back from QP Nova, and QP Nova might be the last rider left to try and challenge Ryorka for that 6th position. The gap is well below a second now between 6th and 7th places, as we see on screen a crash for Montero, who was already well adrift of the battle.
Second crash there for Montero 1 over the course of this race. It's gone from bad to worse for the Spaniard. Disappointment there for him. You can see Rick MotoGP 35 going side by side with Juan NH16 nearly down the back straight. He's not close enough, but Juan NH16 is a little bit wide at turn 16. He's going to close up his Rick MotoGP 35. They're onto the penultimate lap, and he's all out of shape there. Is Juan NH16 onto the start-finish straight. He's able to carry good momentum there, crucially, down to the first corner, and he does somehow hold on to that position.
But coming through just at the front of that shot was the battle for the last qualification position between Ryorka and QP Nova. That's only a half second now between the two of them, and this is going right down to the wire. Less than 2 laps remaining.
Juan NH16 there is going to have to be very careful because race direction are going to be coming down on him like a ton of bricks. He's exceeding track limits multiple times over the last few corners, and they are going to be very, very hard on that. They might hand him a time penalty here, which could potentially be something to smile about for Rick MotoGP 35 here. Let's keep an eye on it, see how it changes over the next lap and a half or so, but down to the reverse corkscrew they go for the penultimate time. No positions changing there for 7th place as it stands.
Well, QP Nova we're back with now, sitting in 7th position. Needs to find a little extra spurt. Fantastic on laps 7 and 8 to bring the gap below a second for the first time in the vast majority of this race. And he's well and truly within touching distance now. Ryorka will try and respond and fight back. Here he is in 6th position, holding the last of those transfer spots. 1 second back from Vindex in P5. The top 5 look largely settled, and nobody up there looks like they're going to get in too much mischief trying to change positions. But positions certainly could change for 6th, 7th, 8th, and indeed 9th.
Yeah, absolutely right. Down the back straight we go. We're looking at your race leader, Trastevere, 73 at the moment. Nice, smooth line there in front of him. 1.4 second advantage as he comes on to the final lap. It has been a very, very impressive race for Trastevere, and exactly what we're used to seeing from the reigning world champion. That is exactly why he has that accolade, because he's just been so calm and so composed. He's not let any pressure get to him, and he's managed to hold out that advantage and hold off the charge of this man here, Paul IG.
Wow, a new fastest lap from Juan NH16, really pushing, knows that it's now or never. The gap is a second between himself and that last transfer spot, so we're going to get very close later on here between Ryorka, QP Nova, who's less than half a second back now, and Juan NH16, who's less than half a second back behind him. A second covering 6th to 8th for the last of those qualification places.
Looking here at your race leader once again, Juan NH16 was fastest last time around. That gap coming down to under half a second. The gap for 6th place as well, coming down to a 1/10 of a second. I'd love to cross back to that. Juan NH16 has crashed out then on the final lap, and here is the battle for the final position in the grand final in Valencia. Who is going to take it? It's Ryorka in 6th place. It's QP Nova on the Realia Vintia Ducati, who is the rider challenging Montero 1. Has had a 3rd crash in this race. It goes from bad to worse for the Spaniard, but here comes QP Nova down towards turn 12. He's not close enough on the breakthrough there. He's going to have to try and hope that Ryorka makes an uncharacteristic error. He makes a mistake on this final lap, or tries to force him into an error.
It's going to take something special, but if he can get the gap down to less than 2/10 of a second, there's still a straight to come, and that's what he's going to be trying to build up to now. High pressure situation for these two, both trying to capitalise in one way or another on the slipstream. Ryorka's trying to break it, QP Nova trying to gain from it. He's smoother down the straight. Is he close enough to make a move? Not for the moment. It's going to be a last bend lunge.
Absolutely right there. Trastevere comes over the line though. He wins MotoGP Esport semi-final 2. An electric performance from the Italian.
And was that a crash for Paul Paul IG. Sorry, Tom. Paul IG, who sat in second position. A graphic just showing there for an incident.
Yeah, let's have a look and see. He has crossed the line. He has been classified potentially in second position, but let's keep an eye and see whether that might be a graphical error. Bomber there in third place. He takes the final spot on the podium ahead of David Galina, Vindex, and Ryorka did manage to hold off the charge from behind. He holds on to that final position by the skin of his teeth in that grand final.
Not to take away anything at all from Trastevere, but our focus for the majority there was on that battle for sixth position and how it gradually closed up. You could see it coming. QP Nova was gaining chunks of time with every passing lap. It was getting tighter and tighter. He was bringing two riders from directly behind him with him, and it couldn't have been much closer on that final lap.
Well, Paul IG has been classified there in second position, so it must have been an incident that happened over the timing line. But we can see that there's lots of drama. You can see the final results on the screen there behind us, but some big talking points there in that race. Alex Trastevere doing exactly what he needed to do, taking that win, taking the best lap in the race, untouchable.
Not sure what that was all about for Paul IG. I apologise for cutting over you there in the excitement of what could have been a race-changing drama in the latter stages, but no such problems in the end, and the top six as they were going into the final lap, finishing that way. But as I said at the time, not much to choose between 6th and 7th places, and Rick Moto GP keeping with them as well. Obviously, the riders who've narrowly missed out there will be bitterly disappointed at the end of what was some real excitement.
And sadly missing out Ivan Avella there as well on board the Red Bull KTM machine. We really thought he was going to be a favourite, and given the pace he had, he looked like a favourite as well. But it comes down to that crucial thing, right place, right time, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Wow, there couldn't have been much more emotion as we're seeing. There we have it in terms of results. Plenty of talking points, though, at the end of that race. And as I say, clearly a variety of emotions among our competitors.
Yeah, we can see Juan at 8:16 there. He's almost in tears at the end of that one there. The emotion on the Spaniard's face. It has been a very difficult time for him. We saw he had the pace. He set the fastest lap in that race, as I correct myself from saying that Trastevere set the fastest one earlier on. But we can see Juan at 8:16 there. So cruel for him there, because we know he had the pace and he knows he had the pace there as well, and you can just see the disappointment for him. It is a big shame for him to end up in that position there, Alex.
Yeah, it couldn't have been a much more dramatic finale, but great to see the sportsmanship and camaraderie between the riders as well, congratulating and commiserating in equal measure, and the atmosphere has been really good here tonight. Mixed emotions, of course, for our riders. A tough race for all of our competitors, and it looks as though we're about to see images of how we got on. It was a long hold at the start line, almost as if to ramp up the drama. Trastevere didn't see any of the drama behind him because he made the break, and I'm sure that was the plan. Pole position, away and gone, lights to flag for victory for our early race leader and pre-race favourite, our reigning world champion. Paul IG, barring that nervous moment when I saw the graphic for a crash in the latter stages, taking a good second position. And then, well, the fight was further back down the order, to be perfectly honest. Paul IG keeping up with Trastevere in the early laps, but gradually dropping away. And I think once he saw the race leader pulling clear, he wasn't about to take too many risks trying to reel him back in. He has been the form man of this week, of this event, and taking second position. Good enough, of course, well and truly to move through to the grand final. A couple of other riders who had quiet, isolated races inside the top 5. Bomber 45 after the disappointment of qualifying, doing a great job, and also we saw plenty of as we just see the images of concentration. That's what I was talking about earlier on here today. David Galina also remaining inside the top 6 and largely untroubled for the vast majority of that race. Vindex moving into the top 5 and consolidating that ranking, as we saw falls for a couple of the riders down the order, most notably Ivan Avella and Mo suffering a torrid time, and he'll be devastated, of course, with that, and commiserations to him as he fails to make it through. We see that the competitors, they've had a tough couple of days. They've had plenty of practices, they've had plenty of trial runs and practice runs here today, but it's all come down to that one race, and well, the drama that we saw on the opening couple of laps qualifying ended up mattering very little aside from those top 2 who blasted clear. A super performance from Trastevere, who, as you can see, celebrates. He's got used to celebrating. He's got well practiced for celebrating. Yet another victory for him.
Exactly, Alex. An emotional and eventful semi-final there. And of course, that was the moment that determined the next 6 seats in our grand final. Now, I have the official results with me now. If the guys would like to come to the stage with me and Tom, we have Trastevere Paul 16, Bomber, Davide Galina, Vindex, and our Yorker. Guys, come and join Tom and I on the stage.
Give them a round of applause as well. An incredible result there for those competitors.
Of course, all the guys have a Michelin cap, which they are wearing. And for our winner, an amazing driving experience at the Nürburgring surface. And of course, if you'd like to present the prize to Travis Derry again, congratulations.
Yeah, Trastevere there. He's already got a BMW at home, of course. He won the championship last year, and now he gets the chance to drive some more BMWs there as well. Let's nip straight in. Trastevere there, an incredible race. Just first of all, tell us, how did you do that? How did you manage to keep the pressure off from Paul behind and create that gap?
Yeah, Paul was very fast, very fast, like me. And the race was clean, very fast all the race. And I searched to keep calm and good. I am very happy.
And of course,
it was a great race.
It was a fantastic race, you're right. And of course,
yes,
another BMW driving experience for you.
Yeah,
you're getting used to these prizes, aren't you?
Yeah. And I will be there with Mandzukic.
Yeah.
And will be great. I hope to enjoy it, obviously, this. And I want to say thanks to all my family, all the people who look at me now. Look at me now. And great. My friends, the makers, and MotoGP, that was great ever.
Well, a round of applause once again to our 6 grand finalists here tonight. Very impressive performances from everybody involved here. Let's have a look then, shall we? And see what the graphics are like then, to see who has made the cut into the grand final from here tonight. You can see there on your screen, Trastevere, Paul IG, Bomber 45, David Galina, Vindex 813, Ryorka 26. They join Christian MM17, Andrew ZH, Luigi 48 GP, Timothy McGarden, Adrian 26, and Ellie Ghost 555. They are going to be our 12 finalists progressing through to the grand final event, making their way to Valencia between the 16th and the 18th of November.
Absolutely, and that is how we look leaving Madrid for another grand final that promises to be epic. And no doubt it's another live event as well, so it's going to be a good one.
Yep, absolutely right, and we'll see you all there. Oh, one more thing, actually, we should probably say goodbye to Alex up in the commentary box. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to both of you as well. It's been equally a pleasure for myself, and now looking forward to finding out how our newly confirmed finalists will get on in less than a month's time. Goodbye for now.
Thanks for that, Alex, and goodbye for me. It's a pleasure to be here with you as well, Tom, by your side.
Well, you're too kind there. Thank you very much, Lisa. You're welcome back anytime. Just try and do me a favour. Don't take my job just yet, hey?
Okay.
Anyway, the MotoGP Grand Final takes place in Valencia between the 16th and 18th of November. Don't miss it. We'll be crowning our second MotoGP Esport World Champion. Thanks so much for joining us. See you then.